It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday. I was off duty. No badge, no gun, just me and my 12-year-old niece, Simone, picking up ice cream at the Riverbend Plaza. She had just aced her science fair project, and I promised her a double scoop of Rocky Road. Simple day, simple joy. We were just leaving the parlor when I heard the wet squish of boots behind me. Then came the deliberate scrape. I looked down. A smear of fresh mud streaked across my right boot. Thick brown sludge still dripping from the edge where it had been pressed. I didn't need to look up to know who did it. "Oops," came the smug voice. "Looks like you missed a spot, boy. Clean it up." I raised my eyes slowly. There he was. Bradley. Thorne, 18, maybe 19 now, blue blazer, gold chain, dumb smirk. Karen's son. Privilege incarnate. Simone stepped closer to me, her small hand clutching mine. From behind him, Karen herself sauntered up like she owned the plaza. Her voice cut through the air like a dull knife. "Oh, Bradley," she said, laughing. "Don't they train them to serve and shine in the academy?" A few people gasped. Phones came out. I spotted 3, maybe 4, pointed in our direction. One man was already whispering into his wife's ear. This wasn't just happening. It was being recorded. Bradley took another step forward, extending, his foot mockingly. "Go on, Sheriff, get to work." My jaw tightened. My niece looked up at me, eyes wide and scared. Everything in me burned, but I didn't lash out. I bent down, pulled a handkerchief from my pocket, and wiped my boot. Slow, deliberate, never breaking eye contact with the boy. He chuckled. "That's right. Good boy." I stood up, folded the cloth, and placed it back in my pocket. I smiled. "You want to see a servant?" I said under my breath, only loud enough for him to hear. "I'll show you what justice really looks like." His smirk faltered, and that's when the countdown began. He just didn't know it yet. People see the badge and make assumptions. Some think I got here on a quota. Others assume I'm some liberal sheriff experiment forced on a town that didn't ask for change. A few think I'm just lucky. But the truth is, I earned every damn stripe on this uniform. Name's Elijah Carter, Sheriff of Colton County, 3rd-generation lawman. My grandfather was one of the first black deputies in Mississippi, worked his beat with a revolver that barely had bullets and backup that rarely showed up. My father walked patrols through protests in the 70s. He taught me everything I needed to know about justice. And patience. He used to say, "You fight with your mind, not your fists, son. That's how you make them bleed without touching them." I didn't understand that at 10 years old. I do now. We didn't grow up with much. Mama cleaned houses. Daddy worked late shifts at the station, sometimes pulling double duty just to make rent. I remember classmates making fun of the way my shoes looked, or how my lunch smelled different. I learned early how to wear silence like armor, but I also learned discipline, structure, service. I joined the Army straight out of high school, served 2 tours overseas, came home with a few medals, a few scars, and a hunger to make my home better than the one I left. I worked my way through the academy, then the department, then, after 20 years of walking the line, I ran for sheriff. And against all odds in a mostly white, deeply conservative town, I won. Not because I kissed babies or promised miracles, but because I listened. I showed up. I responded to every call like it came from my own mama. Color didn't matter to me. Character did. People saw that. Even the ones who didn't like me couldn't deny the numbers. Crime went down. Community. Trust went up. I didn't just want to police, I wanted to heal. But healing doesn't always come without pain. So when Karen's boy tried to humiliate me in public, when he called me boy and smeared mud on my boot in front of my niece, it wasn't pride that held my hand steady. It was purpose. See, I don't want revenge. That's emotional, short-sighted. It leaves the soul hollow. What I want is justice, the kind that teaches, the kind that doesn't just punish, but reveals. Justice that pulls the rotten roots out, not just trims the weeds. Bradley thought he was making a scene. What he really did was step on a landmine, because what he doesn't understand, and what people like Karen never seem to learn, is that when you come at a man like me, you better be damn sure he's got nothing to lose. And I've spent my whole life earning this moment, so I waited. Not because I was weak, but because I knew the difference between a slap and a sentence, and I was about to give them both. That wasn't my first run-in with Karen Thorne. Not even close. In a way, Karen is Colton, at least the version of it that refuses to move on. She's the president of the Stonebrook Heights. Joey drives a pearl-white Escalade and walks around like she's royalty. The kind of woman who calls you sir to your face and sends complaint letters about your lawn behind your back. To her, the town is a kingdom. And people like me, we're the hired help. I'd seen her name plenty in the complaint logs. Noise violations against black families having barbecues, accusations of suspicious behavior for teenagers walking home from school, even a call to the station because someone's truck had too many bumper stickers. Always the same tone, entitled, vague, and dripping with fear disguised as concern. Just trying to keep the neighborhood safe, she'd say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Bradley, her son, was cut from the same rotting cloth. 19 years old. Still lives at home. Entitled to the point of delusion. Arrested twice before I was elected. Once for underage DUI. Another time for vandalizing a black veteran's fence with a Confederate flag spray-painted across it. Both times, the charges disappeared before I could even get my hands on the files. Karen's friends in high places made sure of that. A judge on speed dial, a cousin in the district attorney's office, and a reputation for throwing fundraisers that, coincidentally, always seemed to follow her son's screw-ups. There were whispers, plenty of them, that Bradley dealt pills at high school parties, that he hazed a younger kid so bad the boy had to transfer schools, that he got handsy with a girl at the country club and the whole thing got swept under the rug. But whispers don't make convictions, and Karen made damn sure they stayed whispers. I had to watch from the sidelines as this town enabled him. Again and again. The mayor called it youthful rebellion. Karen called it boys being boys. I called it rot. Because power, when left unchecked, becomes a disease. And this town was sick. The kind of sickness that hides behind fake smiles and gated neighborhoods. The kind that sees a decorated black sheriff as a threat instead of a protector. The kind that raises a boy like Bradley and tells him he can stomp on anyone without consequence. Well, not this time, because the thing about diseases, eventually someone comes to cut them out. The 4th of July in Colton is always a big deal. Parade down Main Street. Speeches from the mayor and city council. Local bands playing country covers under strings of red, white, and blue lights. The town tries real hard to look united, even when it's anything but. I was in uniform that day, not because I had to be, but because I wanted to show face. Presence matters. Especially now, Simone was at home with her mom. I didn't want her around this crowd, not after the mud incident. She'd been quiet all week, still processing the moment when her uncle, the sheriff, got disrespected by a boy barely old enough to vote. I thought maybe Bradley would keep his distance. Maybe someone with sense finally got through to Karen. But no, of course not. It started as I was finishing a conversation with the fire chief near the town square stage. I felt the crowd shift before I heard him. Well, Bradley drawled. The boot cleaner returns. Phones were already in the air. I saw the faint red glow of a live stream icon on his phone screen. TikTok. Great. I turned to face him. Bradley stood grinning, holding a bottle of water in one hand and a soft bristled shoe brush in the other. The kind you'd find in a hotel. Drawer. Behind him, Karen sipped wine from a plastic cup like it was fine crystal. She spotted me and smirked. "Don't mind my son, Sheriff. He just likes a clean finish." Bradley stepped closer, holding up the brush like a microphone. "What do you say, Sheriff? Boot polishing race, you versus me. First one to get that shine wins. Loser has to salute the winner." A few people chuckled. Others stared in stunned silence. The live stream comments were already rolling fast. I caught phrases like, "Wait, WTF? Is this real?" and "No way he does it again." I didn't flinch, didn't blink. just looked him dead in the eyes and said, calm and slow, "You're gonna regret this, son." His smile twitched, but he recovered fast. "What's wrong? Afraid of a little polish? Or just used to shining things on command?" The mayor appeared behind me, whispering over my shoulder, "Just walk away, Eli. It's not worth the scandal." I didn't turn to him. I kept my eyes locked on Bradley. "No," I said. "It's worth every second." I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, stone still, steel-eyed, while Bradley squirmed under the weight of his own joke. The crowd began to shift. What started as laughter turned to confusion. A few murmurs, a few more phones up now. I saw Councilwoman Dobbins shaking her head. I saw a black couple near the front edge the stroller away slowly. Bradley tried to salvage it. "Whatever, man," he scoffed. "Can't take a joke," but his voice cracked, barely. He turned off the stream, mumbled something to his mother, and stormed off. Karen didn't laugh this time, and just like that, the moment was over, or so they thought. What they didn't realize was that someone else had kept recording, start to finish. An independent journalist from the local college paper had caught the whole thing in wide frame. By nightfall, the clip had hit Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. By morning, it was national. Sheriff harassed on duty by rich teen and his mom. Town silent. The headlines rolled in. Memes followed. One showed me standing tall while Bradley held up the brush with the caption, "When the servant has more dignity than the master." Another had my quote in bold white letters over my face. "You're gonna regret this, son." And he would, because what Bradley didn't know, what Karen refused to believe, was that this wasn't a game. It was a fuse, and they had just lit it. I didn't say a word publicly after the 4th of July. No press conference, no social media post, no angry letter to the editor. Let Karen and Bradley think they'd won the silence, because sometimes the most dangerous sound in a storm is the calm. Behind the scenes, I went to work. I stayed late at the station after the deputies clocked out. My office light was the last one glowing in that old brick building night after night. I pored over public records, HOA filings, and police reports going back 5 years, and I started to see a pattern, a system. Noise complaints filed exclusively against Black and Hispanic families. Fines issued for lawn violations that didn't exist. False 911 calls made for people who were just existing in the wrong neighborhood, all originating from the same address, Thorne Residence, Stonebrook Heights. I cross-checked files the previous sheriff buried. I dug into Bradley's sealed juvie records, connected names, cross-referenced call logs. I spoke, off the record, with former classmates, scared parents, even a few officers who finally decided to speak out. Piece by piece, the mask started to fall. And then, one evening, I sat down with Simone and showed her the video. She watched it in silence, her eyes wide, her fingers curled around the edge of the couch cushion. When the clip ended, she didn't say anything for a while. Then she asked, "Is that what they think of you?" My heart cracked right there. I reached over, took her hand in mine. "No," I said softly. "That's what they think of people they can't control." She looked at me, ashamed. I should have said something that day. I should have done something. I shook my head. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You stayed safe. You saw the truth. Truth. That was the key. You can't fight lies with fists. You fight them with facts, with law, with light. That's what my father taught me. They think the badge is my leash," I whispered to myself as Simone leaned into me. "But it's my sword," and I was about to swing it. Because I wasn't just a man with a grudge. I was the law, and it was time they remembered what that meant. Justice takes time and precision. You can't go after someone like Karen Thorne with righteous anger alone. You need paperwork, signatures, proof that's bulletproof. So I went digging, started with the HOA records, publicly accessible, but no one had really examined them line by line, until I did. I noticed some things didn't add up. Yearly dues collected from homeowners in Stonebrook Heights were higher than the neighboring subdivisions. But there were no improvement projects to match. No new park benches, no sidewalk paving, no lighting upgrades. Where was the money going? Turns out Karen had created a maintenance contract with a landscaping company. Only the business didn't exist, not really. It was a shell, registered under the name of her cousin in another county. They'd been funneling HOA funds into personal accounts for over 2 years. That was strike one. Strike two came when I pulled code violation records and matched them with property sales. Minority homeowners, especially Black and Latino families, were getting hit with stacked violations. Fence too high, paint too dull, trash can out too long. Fines piled up fast. Most couldn't fight it. Some gave up and sold under pressure. Guess who bought most of those properties? A realty company tied to Karen's husband's development firm. They'd been flipping the houses for double the price. Displacement. Disguised as decorum. And then there was Bradley. I'd long suspected he was involved in drug distribution. Pills mostly. Adderall, Xanax, some fentanyl-laced tabs. The kind of poison that slips into high school parties and college dorms unnoticed. But there had never been a solid case. Every complaint ended up mysteriously dropped, until I got a tip from an old contact at the state's narcotics task force. They'd intercepted texts between a dealer under surveillance and someone using the initials BT. Location data pinged inside Stonebrook Heights. I ran it myself, matched the burner phone to an old number Bradley used in a prior vandalism arrest. Bingo. But the real break came when I contacted an out-of-town investigator. Someone the DA here couldn't touch. Quiet, experienced, and completely unaffiliated with the local power circle. We coordinated off the books, secured sealed warrants. We wanted this airtight. We interviewed victims, families who'd been fined out of their homes, residents who feared speaking up, teens who'd bought pills from Bradley but had kept quiet out of fear. Then came the gold mine. Karen's secretary, mid-40s, white, single mom. Been working under Karen for 6 years. She walked into my office one Friday afternoon and shut the door behind her. "I can't keep pretending," she said. "I've seen what she does to those people. What she says when no one's listening." She handed me a flash drive. Financial spreadsheets, forged invoices, voice memos. One of them caught Karen laughing on a phone call. "The sheriff can kiss my ass. He can't touch us. The town belongs to me." It was over. I had motive, I had method, I had witnesses, I had receipts. Karen and Bradley thought they were playing checkers. I'd been playing chess the whole time. And now? It was time to flip the board. I called it a community mediation meeting, sent the invite to Karen's official HOA email with a courteous note. Discussion regarding public concerns and HOA transparency. Recommended attendance. I knew she'd show. People like Karen, don't ignore anything with her name on it, especially if there's a chance to assert power or perform victimhood. Bradley tagged along in his usual smug swagger, phone in hand, chewing gum like he owned the room. I'd reserved the town hall chamber for the occasion. Neutral territory, soundproof, and plenty of seating. But this wasn't mediation. This was the reckoning. When they walked in, their smiles froze. Karen's heels stopped clicking. Bradley's gum hit the floor. Waiting for them were faces they never expected. 2 state investigators from the Attorney General's office. An IRS agent who'd been reviewing the HOA financial records. We'd submitted a week prior. 2 journalists from a local watchdog paper. Ones Karen had tried to have banned from HOA meetings. Reverend Simmons and Imam Khalid, leaders from the town's Black and Muslim communities. Councilwoman Dobbins, whose district had suffered most under Karen's HOA rulings, and me, in uniform, sitting at the head of the table like the calm before a hurricane. "Please," I gestured. "Have a seat." Karen blinked. "What?" "Is this?" "A meeting," I said. "You asked for transparency. We're here to deliver." She sat down slowly, glancing around, reading faces, realizing quickly that whatever script she'd prepared wouldn't fly here. I started with the basics, played a few clips, edited with surgical precision. First, the infamous shoe incident. Then the July 4th stream. Then a voice memo of Karen mocking minority homeowners for bringing property values down. Her voice clear as a bell. Just keep finding them until they get tired and move. Karen went pale. Next came documents, screenshots of falsified violation notices, proof of the fake landscaping company and the money trail. A photo of Bradley handing off a baggie in a high school parking lot, time-stamped and geotagged. Bradley stood up suddenly. "This is crap. You can't prove." One of the investigators calmly reached into a folder. "We can, and we have." Bradley bolted for the door. "Bad. Move." Deputy Harlow was waiting just outside with cuffs ready. He didn't resist, because he knew. Knew the fall was real now. Karen stood, trembling with rage. "This is a setup," she shrieked. "You've been conspiring against me. This is political." I stepped forward, voice steady as a sermon. "No, ma'am. This isn't politics. This is accountability." She stared at me, eyes full of venom and disbelief, as if the world had betrayed her simply by refusing to bow. I leaned in. "You could have been a leader, Karen, but instead you chose to be a tyrant behind hedges and HOA bylaws." Silence filled the room like a held breath. Then the IRS agent stood up. "Mrs. Thorne, we'll need to speak to you separately. We have some federal concerns regarding the financial disclosures." And just like that, the Queen lost her crown. They walked her out in stunned silence, heels clicking no more. I stood in that chamber for a long while after, letting the weight of it settle, letting justice breathe. Some call that vengeance. I call it duty. They always say justice is slow, but when it hits like thunder. The morning of Bradley's arrest, the sky was a perfect blue. Not a single cloud. Summer heat already rising off the pavement. Felt like a regular day, until it wasn't. Bradley was live streaming again, this time in front of his followers, bragging about how they couldn't touch him. Laughing about the boot boy sheriff. Showing off his car, flashing hand signs he didn't understand, standing outside a vape shop like he owned the block. And then the cruisers pulled in. 3 black and whites. Quiet. Clean. No sirens. No shouting. Just precision. The officers stepped out, state task force, plain clothes. They moved with surgical calm, surrounded him, and before he could even put his phone down, he was face down on the sidewalk. The stream kept going. Viewers watched live as Bradley Thorne was arrested for drug trafficking, obstruction of justice, and destruction of evidence. The moment went viral before the cruiser even left the lot. Karen saw it on TV. She was in her living room, drinking what she thought was victory coffee. She threw the cup across the room, shattered the mug. 2 hours later, she heard the knock on her door. It wasn't me. I wanted that moment to come from someone else, from the system she thought she controlled. State agents served the warrant. She didn't go quietly. Claimed it was a witch hunt, shouted about political motives and character assassinations. But none of it mattered. She was handcuffed on her front porch, barefoot in a silk robe, her perfect suburban mask shattered. Charges: embezzlement of HOA funds, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false code violations with racial bias, obstruction of a criminal investigation. When they brought her to the courthouse, I stood on the steps, in uniform, hat on, badge gleaming, reporters lined both sides, cameras flashing. And then it happened. As Karen was led past me, wrists shackled, chin quivering, someone captured the exact second she looked at me. Our eyes met. She expected smugness. I gave her silence. That photo, me standing tall, calm as stone while she passed red-faced and humiliated, would become the image that traveled across the country, a symbol, not of revenge, of restraint. That same afternoon, the Stonebrook Heights HOA held an emergency vote. Karen was stripped of her position unanimously, her name removed from the board, her decisions marked for audit and reversal. Her kingdom collapsed in hours, and that evening I called a press conference. The town square was packed. Journalists, locals, deputies, kids on their dad's shoulders. Simone sat in the front row next to her mother, eyes wide and proud. I stepped up to the war. Mick took a breath. Today is not about victory. It's about restoration. Cameras clicked. For too long, systems meant to protect and serve were used to silence and push out. That ends here. That ends now. A pause. Justice doesn't wear a color, I said. It wears a badge, and it serves everyone. The crowd erupted, not in cheers but in relief, like a weight finally lifted. Over the next few days, the national media ran with it. Outlets from D.C. to L.A. picked up the story. Black sheriff brings down HOA queen in small town scandal. Sheriff Eli Daniels. Dignity in the face of disrespect. I didn't do interviews, didn't go on talk shows. I stayed home with my niece. Took her to the diner again. This time, nobody looked twice. She held my hand as we walked out, looked up at me and said, "Uncle Eli, you didn't even raise your voice." "No," I smiled. "I just raised the truth." And in the end, that's what real justice looks like. 2 months later, I was back at the plaza with Simone, same place where it all began. Only this time, no mud, no stares, no sneers, just sunshine, laughter, and the soft jingle of wind chimes from the little gift shop. Simone tugged at my hand. "Uncle Eli, look." On the brick wall facing the fountain, a new mural had gone up. Bright colors, bold strokes, a scene of unity. Black, white, brown kids playing beneath a large oak tree. And in the center, a man in uniform standing tall, holding a child's hand. Me, painted by the high school art class. The likeness wasn't perfect, but the message hit me like a hymn. Strength, peace, honor. I didn't say anything at first. Just stared. That's when a woman stepped up beside me, maybe mid-40s, wearing scrubs and a tired smile. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "My son. He can finally ride his bike in peace now. No more complaints, no more fear." I nodded slowly, warmth creeping into my chest. "Sometimes," I said, "the best shine comes after a little dirt." She smiled and walked off. Simone leaned against me, eyes on the mural, quiet and proud. And I stood there for a long while, letting the sun soak into my shoulders. This town wasn't perfect. It never had been. But it was healing. One truth at a time. And to you, the one. Reading this, I leave you with this. Never bow to hate, but never forget. Justice is a long game, and I play to win.